and physically, and Eala stayed strong and has a huge win for her.
44 unforced errors. That's what the defending Wimbledon champion walked away with that afternoon. Her opponent finished with 21. Read that again. A six-time Grand Slam winner, more than double the mistakes of a 21-year-old ranked outside the world's top 30. Stop and think about that. Because on paper, this match should never have been close. Iga Swiatek was the defending champion at the All England club. A former world number one. A player who had already proven she could win on every surface tennis has to offer. Clay, hard court, grass, it didn't matter. She had come back to London to defend her crown. Across the net stood Alexandra Eala, 21 years old, from a country that in the entire Open era had never once sent a player past the third round of a Grand Slam. So the question hanging over centre court that Saturday wasn't really can she win. It was something bigger. Could a young player who had spent years training an ocean away from home turn a third-round match into history? And if she did, what would it mean for a country of over 100 million people who had never seen this happen before? Let's rewind to where this really started. This wasn't just another match. This was centre court at Wimbledon, the one place in tennis where legends are remembered forever, where every point is played under a weight no other court quite carries. And on that particular Saturday, it became the stage for something nobody had fully scripted in advance. Iga Swiatek had arrived at Wimbledon carrying more questions than her ranking suggested. She was still the champion, still one of the most dangerous players in the draw, but her season hadn't been the dominant run people had come to expect from her. She had struggled at times to find consistency. Her French Open campaign had ended earlier than usual, and she came into Wimbledon still searching for her very best form. Even so, almost nobody expected her to lose before the second week of the tournament. Alexandra Eala understood exactly who she was facing. She knew every point would have to be earned, that every mistake could be costly, that any opportunity might disappear in seconds. And yet there was something different about the way she carried herself. She wasn't playing with fear. She was playing with belief. For Eala, simply reaching this stage was already something special. She had become one of the brightest young names in tennis after years of hard work. Leaving home at a young age to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain, far from family and familiar surroundings, climbing the rankings step by step rather than arriving all at once, one result at a time. Now she had another chance to prove she belonged among the very best, on the biggest court the sport has. There was history sitting quietly in the background of every point. No player from the Philippines had ever reached the fourth round of a Grand Slam in the Open era. An entire nation was watching, hoping this young woman could do what no one before her had done. Inside centre court, that hope had a sound. Every great rally brought louder cheers. Every winner from Eala pulled a little more of the crowd onto her side. She wasn't just hearing applause anymore. She was starting to feel the crowd lean fully in her direction, point by point. So what actually happens when a player with nothing to lose refuses to play like it? Eala came out attacking. She stood inside the baseline, took the ball early, and refused to let Swiatek dictate the rallies. Against most opponents, that approach would have been bold. Against a six-time major champion, it bordered on reckless. But she never pulled back from it. Swiatek answered the way champions do, chasing down balls that shouldn't have been reachable, stretching rallies out, testing whether the young Filipina's nerve would eventually crack. It didn't. Game after game, neither player gave an inch. Whenever Eala produced a brilliant winner, the defending champion answered with one of her own, chasing down balls that looked unreachable and forcing rallies to run longer than they had any right to. Every service game turned into a test of composure. The rallies grew longer, the pressure grew heavier, and what had been billed as a routine third-round match turned into something far bigger. Fans leaned forward in their seats with every exchange. Every winner drew loud cheers, every mistake brought a nervous hush. Nobody in that stadium wanted to miss a single point. This wasn't the one-sided contest many had predicted. This was a real fight, and neither woman was willing to blink first. The set stretched on, every point carrying more weight than the one before it, until it couldn't be settled in 12 games and came down to a tiebreak. 7 points, the purest test tennis has to offer, that don't care about reputation or ranking. Swiatek had been in these moments many times before. She knew how to survive pressure, how to win these kinds of battles. That's exactly what 6 Grand Slam titles teach a player. For Eala, this was different. She wasn't only facing a champion. She was facing her own nerves, and the weight of the history sitting one match away. Every loose shot here could swing the entire afternoon. Every brave decision could become the turning point that defined it. The tiebreak turned into a battle of nerve. Point after point, neither player gave in. Swiatek earned chances to take the set outright. Eala refused to let them go. She stayed calm, trusted her swing, and played with courage instead of fear. The tiebreak swung back and forth until center court could barely stay quiet between points. Until, after more than 80 minutes of tennis, Eala found the opening she needed and sealed it, 11 points to 9. For a moment, center court went silent. Then it erupted. The crowd rose to its feet. Eala turned to her team, clenched her fist, and let out a roar that needed no translation. She had just taken the opening set off the defending Wimbledon champion. Here's where most stories like this one would end. The underdog gets her big moment, and reality catches up in the very next set. So which was it going to be this time? Most people assumed the hardest part was behind her. Surviving a tiebreak like that against a champion should have drained something out of her, physically, emotionally, or both. Instead, it seemed to give her more confidence. She walked back out for the second set with the same fearless attitude, no visible panic, no sign she was thinking about the history now within reach. She stayed focused on one point at a time, and that simple mindset made the difference. Swiatek needed a response, and she came out looking determined to find one. But Eala had no intention of letting the momentum shift back. She kept attacking, kept stepping inside the court whenever she had the chance, forcing the champion to defend instead of dictate. And slowly, the pressure that was supposed to sit on the 21-year-old shoulders moved to the other side of the net. Swiatek began forcing shots that would normally have landed just inside the lines. A few forehands sailed long. A few backhands missed their targets. The mistakes started to add up, and by the finish, the numbers told the story plainly: 44 unforced errors from the champion, 21 from the challenger. Eala also won an impressive 68% of the points on Swiatek's second serve, refusing to hand back the easy opportunities a champion usually creates for herself. With every winner Eala produced, the cheers inside center court grew louder. More of the crowd began pulling for the underdog outright. Even neutral spectators found themselves hoping they were about to witness something rare. Then came another break of serve, and the balance of the match shifted completely. Eala was no longer chasing the upset. She was closing it out. Break after break, she pressed forward, staying committed to the same aggressive game plan without hesitation or second-guessing. As the finish line came into view, the tension inside center court returned. Everyone knew they were only a few points from witnessing history, but closing out a match against a Grand Slam champion is rarely simple. Eala reached 3 match points. The first slipped away. The second disappeared as well. The pressure grew heavier, and the stadium held its breath. Then came the third opportunity. This time she didn't hesitate. She stayed aggressive, trusted her instincts, and won the point that completed one of the biggest victories of her career. For a brief moment, she simply stood there, as if she needed a second to believe what had just happened, the noise of the crowd still building around her. Then the emotion arrived. She smiled. She looked toward her team. She raised her arms. 2 hours and 14 minutes after it started, the scoreboard confirmed what almost nobody had predicted before the first ball was struck. Alexandra Eala had defeated defending champion Iga Swiatek, 7-6, 6-2. Center court answered with a standing ovation. Not just because an upset had happened, but because everyone in that stadium had watched a young player perform with courage far beyond her years. Afterward, Swiatek showed the respect true champions are known for. Instead of making excuses, she credited her opponent directly, saying Eala had played with courage in the biggest moments, especially in that first set tiebreak, and that she had earned the win. Coming from a 6-time Grand Slam champion, those words carried real weight. They confirmed what everyone inside center court had already sensed. This wasn't luck. This wasn't simply a bad day for the champion. Eala had earned every single point. She finished the match with fewer mistakes, stayed composed when the pressure was at its highest, and made the most of the moments that mattered. That composure was the real difference between two players separated by 6 Grand Slam titles on paper, and almost nothing on the scoreboard that day. Eala, still processing it all, told reporters she was still trying to take in what had happened. She called it one of the biggest moments of her career and thanked everyone who had continued believing in her journey, not only for herself, but for everyone watching back home. Because this victory reached far beyond one scoreline. She had just achieved something no Filipino player had ever done in the Open era. For years, young tennis players in the Philippines had dreamed of seeing one of their own compete with the very best. That afternoon, Eala didn't just compete. She won, against the defending Wimbledon champion, on center court, in front of the entire tennis world. None of it happened by accident. Years earlier, she had left the Philippines to train at the Nadal Academy in Spain. It wasn't an easy decision. She spent years away from home, working through difficult days, learning from defeats, slowly building the game that could compete at the highest level. Those sacrifices weren't always visible. On center court, they finally were. Every early morning practice, every disappointing loss, every lesson learned, all of it leading to this single moment. For a country with over 100 million people, and until that day, no history of reaching this far in a Grand Slam, watching one of their own not just compete but win against a defending champion carries a different kind of weight. It's the difference between hoping something is possible and finally having proof, and that difference is exactly what makes this win bigger than the scoreline. The story isn't finished yet. The win sends Eala into the fourth round of Wimbledon, where another major test is waiting. Jasmine Paolini, a player with her own Grand Slam experience and pedigree. The road ahead only gets harder. But after beating the defending champion on the sport's biggest stage, nobody is willing to underestimate Alexandra Eala anymore. She has changed the conversation. She has changed expectations. And perhaps most importantly, she has changed what young Filipino tennis players believe is possible for themselves. Long after the final point, people will still be talking about that afternoon on center court, not just for one incredible shot or one dramatic tiebreak, but because they watched the arrival of a player who refused to be intimidated by the biggest name across the net, on the biggest court the sport offers. This is only the fourth round. If you want to see how far this run goes, stay with us. The next chapter is already being written.